The Holy Gospel this morning is according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to the 12, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. Okay, well, I noticed my last message a couple weeks ago was way longer than I normally give a service.
Amen.
So I will apologize a little bit for the length, and I will shorten it up. I'm going to use one of my great-grandpa's favorite sermons when he would fill in service. So the message today is, we are free from sin, so as such, don't do it. Amen. We can continue with the music as... No, I'm kidding. That was his favorite sermon, though, actually. Great-grandpa was very interesting, very fascinating man. He was born in Minnesota, in a little town called Marshall. Was the oldest of 13. And when he was, I don't want to say like 5, 6, 7 years old, he broke his leg. Of course, in those days, and living rurally, they didn't really have good access to medicine, to a doctor, and so they set the leg as best they could, but it didn't heal quite right, and so he ended up with a limp. Well, it was enough of a limp that it really hindered his ability to work on the farm. He did what he could. He had amazing upper body strength to compensate. He was actually on a gymnastics team at one point, and was phenomenal at it. But not being able to work on the farm didn't make him very useful to keep around at the farm, so the family got the money together and they sent him to school. So when he graduated high school, he moved on to college, and he went there, and his goal was he was going to become a doctor. Makes sense, he had a goal. But this, of course, was also during the 1930s. As such, money got tight. Work was slim to none. People were having issues all over the place, being able to even find enough to eat, let alone work to do or food enough to feed their whole family. People would wander the country aimlessly, would start heading west because they heard there was promises of work and there was food and it was the land of milk and honey, so we all need to move that way. We need to get out of the Dust Bowl. Well, he went to college as long as he could, but he ran out of money. Couldn't quite finish up his degree, and he ended up stopping short with a master's degree in chemistry and physics. So then he got himself a teaching job in a high school. What else am I going to do? I can at least go and do this. Along the way, he had many interactions with different people, and they were always good and honest interactions. You remember him telling me a story. I did an interview of him for a high school paper. It was go and interview someone who went through the Great Depression. And he was explaining to me different things that they had to do. At one point, he lived in a one-bedroom apartment with his brother, who had also tried to get through college and also ran out of money too soon before he could get his degree to be a doctor. And so he was working and doing other jobs, and they were living together, and they would pool their money so that they would have enough to buy a loaf of bread at the beginning of the week and another one somewhere halfway through, because then between the two of them, they could make sure they both stayed relatively fed. At the same time they were doing this, they were saving every other penny they could think of, because they had a little brother coming up who was in school now and wanted to become a doctor, and they said, by golly, he is going to become a doctor. And they scrimped and saved and pinched, and they helped support him and get him all the way there. Another point he talked about, there was a farmer who was trying to just get something, scrape some money together, and he had some corn for sale. Well, my grandpa managed to have a grain truck, so he bought this corn from this fellow, so he didn't have to try to get it to the market or to get it to an elevator or any of those things. And he bought it from him for 3 cents a bushel. Imagine that. Going down the road, he managed to find someone who actually was a cleaner. Clean grain. A guy, of course, was also out of work. No one could afford that. But he was working, he had a job, he was teaching. So he had a little bit of money to deal with that. So he made a deal with the guy and he cleaned that corn for 2 cents a bushel. And he ended up going down the road and found a rancher who was in need of feed. He couldn't afford what the feed price was at the elevator or anyone else. But my grandpa talked to him and said, well, I've got this truckload of corn. I'll sell it to you. The guy says, well, what do you want for it? He goes, 7 cents a bushel? Sold. All of a sudden, everyone worked out. The farmer who raised the corn got paid for his corn that would have otherwise gone to waste. The cleaner got some work who was otherwise out of work. And the farmer all of a sudden got feed for his herd that he wasn't sure he was going to be able to find. Going down the road, Grandpa eventually ended up teaching at Medicine Lake in northeast Montana. And it got to a point where things were starting to pick up, things were getting better in the areas. And he started a pep band for the games, for the basketball games and sports games, football games, whatever events were going on, he had put together a pep band. And it was quite the band because he had anyone who could hold an instrument was in the band, including the janitor. And they had a number of members from the community who would join in. And they got so popular playing pep band at games that they actually started getting asked to play at all of the games in the area. Not just the Medicine Lake games, but every other game in the region that they could get to, they were asked to come and play for. Well, that only lasted a couple seasons because other people got the idea that this was fun and they started their own. But in the meantime, he helped teach and provide the music for everyone to be able to have a little bit more entertainment at the games. Everyone got to play and everyone got to join in. And all of these things were because Grandpa thought, well, this needed to be. Get a little bit further along, and my grandma was born, his first daughter of 3. And they ended up moving into Sydney, eventually in there. And Grandpa also liked to do lay ministry. He liked getting up in church or playing music at church. And he really didn't know which denomination he really was because he would go serve at the Methodist church or the Presbyterian church or the Baptist church or the Lutheran church or whatever church called and said we could use someone to present. Meanwhile, as such, my grandma would go with as they got older, and she would go with her sisters or cousins or friends or whoever, and they would go to all sorts of different services to go and hear the messages from different pastors and things. Whatever church Dad happened to be at, hear his message, or they'd go with a cousin who was also a pastor in the area of another denomination to hear what he had to say, or go play on the playground equipment at the different churches, which was just as good when they were 6 and 7 years old. All of these things, though, he did because he wanted to help. He was doing the right thing as far as he was concerned. Of all the people I've known in my life, my great-grandpa was one that had lived with the least amount of sin I've ever met. He never felt the need to try to cheat or lie to get himself ahead. He was always earnest and honest, and he was always willing to share. Sometimes you had to be really careful about what you asked a question of him, because you might get a 3-hour dissertation answer. You got your answer, but it may have taken a lot of listening and sitting before you got to it. So you're really careful that you ask those questions on a stormy day or in the evening when you weren't trying to go back outside and play with your cousins. He was a had lived a fascinating life. Part of the Sons of Norway, and shared with all sorts of people. All the different things, all the different stories, helped make connections for people. He would know as many people as he could, and if someone said, I need help painting my house, he could go, well, you should go and talk to John across, 2 blocks over. He's been looking for something to do. He's good at painting. I bet he'd give you a hand with it. Things on that nature, helping make connections, helping people accomplish their goals. And that's what we need to live for. That's what we need to strive for, is to live these good lives, to abhor sin, and to try to do the righteous thing, the good thing, to help your neighbor. Jesus said, whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. Even the smallest of favors, the littlest amounts of help, can help change a person's day. It could even help change their life. Simply even holding the door for someone can help restore someone else's faith in humanity. They may be going through a tough time. They may have lost their job. They may not be able to afford enough food. They may need repairs for their car that they can't afford to get, a new computer, a new phone, whatever it might be. And they're having a tough time. But that simple act of kindness, of someone doing something for someone else without looking for recompense, can change so many people's perspective. It can give just a little bit of warmth in someone's heart. And then they go and pass it on and pass it forward. Maybe they're standing in line and the person ahead is $1.50 short of what they need, and they just don't have it. And so now they're starting to look at what do they need to get rid of? What do they need to take off of the belt so that they can still pay for their purchase? Be able to walk ahead and put the $2 down and say, it's taken care of today. All of these things we can do. They're simple, they're easy, and it makes everyone happy. We were freed from being slaves of sin. No longer are we stuck at being unable to be forgiven of our sins. But the freedom is simply a forgiveness away. So the next goal, the next trick in our lives is to be able to walk away from that sin and be happy about it. When I hear about this, I think about people who have addictions to one thing or another, whether it be to smoking and alcohol, or if they just are way too fond of getting in arguments with people, or pulling a prank, or lying. They get their jollies out of telling someone an untruth so that they can watch the destruction follow when someone follows through on what they think is true information. Their addictions to this unhealthy behavior, this sinful nature that we live with. It's destruction, and we've lived with it as in humanity for so long that some of us don't understand, can't see that what we're doing is sinful. So the first goal is understanding and admitting that there's something wrong. Just like with any addiction, admission is the first step. To know and understand that you have a problem. To be able to listen to someone say, hey, what you're doing isn't good. Whether it's smoking, it's not good for your body, or enjoying arguments because you're making people unhappy with you or with other people. You're simply making someone unhappy. And no one in this world really deserves to be made unhappy if they didn't do anything to deserve it. So as we go through life, we need to look at ways to reduce our addictions, whatever it might be in our lives. Sometimes it's sitting and watching the TV just a little too long, staying up late at night just a little bit longer than we should have, or staying in bed in the morning just a little bit more, or a little bit longer than necessary. We end up having to hurry ourselves, or we end up late for work. Little things like that, because now we're delaying someone else's progress. Once again, sin. or we judge others. And some people, that's a great pastime for them, to sit in kibitz and complain about others, what other people have or what other people are doing. Well, did you hear so-and-so got a new pickup, and then they went drinking on Friday night and they wrecked it? God, geez. So many people I've watched and sat and listened to, and they get their jollies out of judging these people who do things like that. I remember hearing a story. I worked with a guy who went out, oil field, he went out and bought this Denali pickup with every option he could get on it, plus a few bells and whistles. Spent $95,000 on this silly thing. And it was like, why would you do that? He said, well, I have the money. I don't have any bills. I wanted it. Okay, I can go with that. I can let you buy with that because you didn't hurt anybody. You didn't starve anyone. You did not pay your bill. So you got yourself this pickup that was nice and shiny and pretty and was way more than you deserved, but that's my sin for judging that. But then he went out carousing, didn't care for what he'd gotten, didn't have any attachment to it or care in the world, and he wrecked it one night, coming back from the bar after having spent $6,500 throwing money at drinks and waitresses, wrapped it around a tree, walked away unscathed, didn't care. Meanwhile, people had to go and fix the ditch, had to repair the pavement that he ripped up a little on his way through. Someone had to go out and cut down that tree that he had mostly knocked over. He made life difficult for a number of people who otherwise could have gone about doing their normal job, whether it was building roads or planting trees or mowing the ditch. And the problem was he didn't care. And that is one thing that God calls us to do, is to care. To understand our sinful nature, that we need forgiveness and to forgive each other, but to care enough to be forgiven. To care enough to not try to sin against anyone else. Care is such an important thing in the world, especially when we talk about the church. If we could just give a little bit of care, help provide a little bit of comfort for someone else, be it by helping them mow their lawn, going and visiting, having coffee, inviting someone over for coffee and a piece of cake, inviting someone out for a barbecue, neighbors, going and helping your neighbor harrow their field, plant, whatever it might be, whatever they might need help with, working their cows, getting branding gone through. Whatever these things could be, simply walking with someone or talking to someone on the phone for a few minutes, just to check in and see how they're doing. All of these things we are called to do, because since we were freed from sin, there is no reason that we can't talk to one another. And then if one of the other of us steps on the other's toes, we can ask for forgiveness and give it, understanding that we are simply human, that we are put upon this earth being imperfect, and sometimes making mistakes that affect other people, but being willing to apologize for those mistakes, to help try to make it right, to go out and give some care to each other in this world, to show a little bit of righteousness by not expecting any kind of return in your life, but the joy of knowing that you made someone else's life better. When you welcome Jesus into your heart, who preached to us peace, was the one that Elijah spoke of, that would be the prophet. Whoever welcomes him who sent him, God. If we welcome God into our lives, there is nothing we can't accomplish. If we live in that light, we can receive our reward of righteousness. If we go beyond just the words of the prophets that are printed in the Bible, that have been taught to us all the years of our lives, but we live as a righteous person, we receive that reward that we are forgiven of any transgression, and that we are accepted by God, loved by Him, that when we pass from this world on to the next, we are welcomed with open arms into His heavenly kingdom. all it takes is that simple act of caring for someone else. Whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. Go forth and help each other and love each other through these acts of kindness. Expect no reward in return except the joy that someone else's life is better. Amen.